Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned in to my weekly talk radio TV show called My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced, get happy with Dr. Marissa. But this is a show about hope and happiness because I don't want you to be walking around with all the worry and all the hate. So there's no gossip and no scandal. And I used to say there were no K words, no Kardashian talk on the show, but that's not very nice. So I stopped saying that. But you're tuned in to my CNBC NBC News radio channel, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and everywhere streaming, iHeartRadio, Tiki Live, iTunes, you name it. It's too long to go into. But I'm hoping that thank you for continuing to support this show. I am now 467 consecutive weeks on the air. Because you support me and the positive talk that I do. Your hashtag positively opinionated host is here. And today we have a very special show. You know, a couple of weeks ago when everything was starting with the Asian crimes that I did have a show on it, but it continues. And I really thought that it was time to bring in some solutions. So I have a beautiful panel in front of me of Asian American community leaders who are here. I have to thank, I'll introduce all of them, but the first one I'm introducing is the man who helped put this panel together, so I wanted to thank him. John Lee is a council member in the city of Los Angeles. He was elected to his first term in March 2020. He's the first Asian American to represent the 12th district and only the third Asian American to be elected to the city council. Manju is, I'm gonna let you pronounce all of your name later, but it's beautiful, is the executive director of Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, a coalition of over 40 community-based organizations that serves and represents the 1.5 million Asian Pacific Islanders in Los Angeles County. Manju also serves as a lecturer at the Asian American Studies Department of UCLA. Connie Chung Joe, JD, is the Chief Executive Officer of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Los Angeles, the nation's largest legal and civil rights organization for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Prior to Advancing Justice LA in 2020, Connie served as the executive director of the Korean American Family Services. Stephen Kang is the director of external affairs at KYCC, Koreatown Youth Community Center, and vice president of the KAFLA, Korean American Federation of LA. He also served as district director in the California State Assembly and executive director of the Korean American Coalition. Please welcome to my studio this very esteemed panel. So grateful to have all of you. I hope you enjoyed the applause. That was a standing ovation for all of you. And so we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to launch into my questions since we have introduced you. My first question is kind of personal. So when you first started hearing about these crimes against Asian Americans, and for me, that was actually back in June before the shooting, when I signed a change.org petition to get mainstream media to cover the increasing number of crimes against Asian Americans. So what was your mind reaction? What was your heart reaction? And we'll start on the count of three, point to the person on the panel that you want to have start. Just kidding. we'll start with John Lee because he's the man who helped me put this panel together. John.
Well, Marissa, I know that your show is about hope and happiness, but honestly, when I started hearing it, I was really angry. I was angry that we still have leaders in this country that, in order to deflect from their failures, still resolve to scapegoating. And our communities have been scapegoated for over 100 years here in this country. And to feel that it was happening again, that's something that none of us had anything to do with, but because, people were struggling and the failures of certain administrations, that they felt the need to point at someone and to constantly use rhetoric that obviously, it angered people enough that they, would not only go to racial slurs and stuff, but to actually result in physical violence. It really made me angry.
Yeah, absolutely. When I heard he was saying Kung flu and Chinese virus, and when it first broke back in March, the fact that people were not sitting near anyone looking Asian in class in the university was like, are you kidding me? You think you can catch the virus from China to America in the classroom? So sorry. Yes. Let's go to Manju.
Thanks so much, Dr. Marissa, for having me on, and really an honor to be with you, and also to have on individuals representing our member organizations, Steve and Connie, and also Councilmember Lee. For us, we saw this actually before the pandemic even hit Los Angeles. So the first act of racism against our community that we became aware of was on February 4th. A child at a local middle school was physically attacked and verbally assaulted on the schoolyard. He was out with friends in the school during school time, and another child came up to him and said, "You're a coronavirus carrier. Go back to China." And when the child responded that he was not Chinese, he was punched in the face and head 20 times. So it was after that we really began to become involved in the issue, worked with the family and the school district, and then also had a press conference with local leaders to say, this is not acceptable. We're not going to tolerate this in Los Angeles. And so that's how we really began our involvement on this issue and worked with so many partner organizations in trying to address it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Steve.
So as two of the speakers before me alluded to, this has been happening for many, many years. And I feel that as an Asian American, we felt so invisible. And when I first started seeing images, CCTV footage of elders being pushed and violence being inflicted, I was devastated. And I thought although the first cases, many of the ones that are being elevated were in Oakland and New York, not necessarily here in Los Angeles, but I was pleading with my media contacts here, especially within the Korean language media, saying, as Asian Americans, we need to write about this. We need to talk about this. We need to stand in solidarity with our Chinese American and other API communities. And in the beginning, people weren't, taking notice. And I'm sure we'll talk about that issue too. Yeah. But when it hit here in Koreatown, here in Los Angeles, I think people started to begin to take notice. Mm-hmm. And now we have, influencers like you, Dr. Marissa, and others who are elevating this issue, mm-hmm. which is so important.
Right. Yeah, I purposely did not. I could have invited, San Francisco, Oakland, New York people to come and do this panel. And I had this thought, no, I want local. I really want our community to feel the energy and the willingness, because everybody talks all the time about needing awareness before you can change something. I agree, except that after awareness, you have to have willingness. If you don't have the willingness, it doesn't matter if you're aware of it, if you're not going to do anything. So thank you. Connie.
Yeah, so when the pandemic first hit, I was actually the executive director of a different nonprofit called Korean American Family Services, or KFAM. And KFAM is located in the heart of Koreatown. And I think, like Manju said, even before the lockdown, in end of January, early February, we started to see the impact right away of Koreatown became a ghost town. No one would come to businesses here. People were avoiding it. And our clients, who were predominantly Korean immigrants, started losing jobs right away. And then we started hearing the stories of harassment, or landlords saying things like, I want you out of my building because I don't want you spreading coronavirus. So we started hearing that very quickly, even before lockdown happened. And as the months progressed, we started to hear more and more cases of Asians being attacked. And I would see it all the time on my social media. And I have to say, what went through my heart and mind was, it was what led me to switch jobs at this time to become the CEO of Asian Americans Advancing Justice LA, because I was very happy in my last job and didn't plan on leaving and taking a new job during the pandemic. But what I thought about as I saw the escalation in hate during this time was, my kids and my grandkids are going to be learning about this in the history books. There is no doubt this is going to make it in our U.S. history books. And when it does, and when they come to me and they ask me, what was it like to live through this period? It was important for me to be able to say that I was doing something as part of the solution. And that's why I ended up coming back to my original career as a civil rights lawyer and joining Advancing Justice LA, because I wanted to be able to say that I am doing something as part of the solution. And I think that's what we all want to do now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that feeling. So you talked, John, about, being angry. And I think that it is good to be angry because you have to feel that fully. But the anger fueling hatred to hate back at the people is probably not the direction we need to go. However, our culture as Asians, and I'm going to put this moose on the table right now, because of the next question, which I'm like horrible with staying with questions, by the way. So I'm gonna just say it first, because the segue here is, there seems to be a fixed pie attitude in our country right now. Anytime you focus on one race, another one feels that they are being ignored. How can we bridge that gap so that we heal all differences? So I don't know if you've heard, I've been told, you're taking this too far, you're overreacting. The massage killings weren't even about Asians. It was, it was a sex addiction, and you really don't use your platform to only solely. What about the Native Americans? What about all of these other races? So I wanted this question to sort of fuel why it's so important for Asians right now to speak up. So John, we'll go back to you.
Sure. I mean, it's important for us because, whether it be culturally or whether it be a language barrier, for so long we've been told not to make waves and to focus on your work and that you'll get by. And I think the community, it's really galvanized us to come together and say, enough is enough. We've taken this for not only centuries, but within our own lifetimes of really never being felt that you were treated as a true American, right? I'm born and raised right here in the city of Los Angeles. And, I just believed that this was our time to actually speak up on all of those things. And, I said it today in city council, I love this country, but I also love my Korean heritage. And, just because I have that love for my Korean heritage doesn't diminish my love for this country or make me any less American.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Steve, you're nodding.
Yeah, I completely agree with the council member on this. As an Asian American, I've been told to just keep my head down, just work hard, be quiet. And when things like these types of issues pop up, we tend to be very quiet and silent about it. But I agree, and I'm sure many of the panelists here would agree with me, that it's time to speak up as an Asian American. So about 2 weeks ago, with Councilmember John Lee, Manju, and with Connie, with Advancing Justice, we put together a large rally and march here in Koreatown, Los Angeles, where we had about 2,000 people come out. It wasn't just with the AAPI community, it was the African Americans, it was Latinx, and it was everybody, the Jewish community coming out. And then it was beautiful to see our Korean American council member leading that march on Olympic Boulevard, such an iconic boulevard in Los Angeles, representing so much history and diversity. We couldn't hold hands because of the pandemic, but we were marching with our masks and our signs all together. That was beautiful. Yeah. And I think, I've been telling other communities or allies saying that, we've been quiet for so long, and we're finally getting noticed about this issue. Yeah. The president of the United States has created a special task force. I don't think that would have ever happened. I would have dreamed that would happen in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm. And if you've just tuned in and you're wondering who I am speaking with, I've got a nice panel of Asian American leaders who are here to talk about ending Asian AAPI hate, stop the hate and racism, and how do we move from hate to solution? And the question that just got put on, I always say put the moose on the table, because it's my Canadian version of talking about the elephant in the room. I was actually born in Canada into a very homogenous German town. And so I grew up Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. So for me, it was always about distancing myself from my Chinese roots. I was not proud of being Chinese. I was not proud of being Asian. When people said, "Are you Hawaiian?" I would lie and say yes. So for me to come full circle now and to say, like you, John, I love my Chinese roots. I love the fact that I am diverse and a colorful woman. But it is one of those sensitive, people don't want to talk about group differences because they don't want to stereotype. But the reality of our Asian cultures, I don't know about the Korean, but Chinese and Japanese have a saying, the nail that stands up is hammered down. Do you have that in the Korean culture as well? I always meant to ask.
I think there's something similar.
Similar to that. So we're not supposed to speak up. We're not supposed to. And so we've got this, home pressure to, I'm an embarrassment to my family because I've got a mouth and I use it. So the internal and the external, you're an Asian woman. I used to, when a guy would say, I've always been attracted to an Asian woman, I would say, I'm not cooking for you, I'm not cleaning for you, and the only way I'm walking on your back is with high heels on. So I don't follow that group difference. But it is, like the woman in San Francisco, I love her. She got punched in the face. She took a plank, smacked her, put him in an ambulance, basically. And then her son donated, did a GoFundMe over $1 million, and she won't take the money, because that's the Chinese way. You don't make waves, you don't stand out, you don't ask for charity. So it has hurt us in some ways to not have the recognition that we matter just as much. Squeaky wheel is not in our vocabulary. So, Manju, how do you encourage a population of people who aren't comfortable with saying, hello, this hurts?
Well, I think if we look back at our history, there have been so many times of resistance. And so I don't want us to shortchange our ancestors and what they did. They fought against Chinese exclusion. They fought against the Japanese American incarceration, against the Asiatic Barred Zone Act that tried to, essentially kept us from immigrating to the U.S. for more than 50 years. And what I want to say too, Dr. Marissa, is that while there are some components of our culture, keep in mind, white supremacy is silencing us, right? And we don't move up the corporate ladder. We don't move up in government when we challenge the status quo. So that's, I think, as much in effect as maybe some of these cultural norms is that we've been silenced by institutions, right? And by structural racism. I'll give you one example, which is, to the invisibility that Steve talked about. I was on a House Judiciary Committee hearing testifying a few weeks ago. That was the first hearing on Asian American issues since 1987. That's when I graduated from high school. A lot has happened since 1987. And for us to not even have our issues addressed in the halls of Congress. So, I don't think we should put so much pressure on ourselves as to say, look at what our institutions, how they've shortchanged us. And we need to get involved, and this is the moment to do it. And also, as has been said, we have been involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. We've been working on immigration enforcement alongside our Latinx sisters and brothers. So I think that, we certainly can be more visible on these issues, but it's something that our communities have been doing for a long time. And so I'm glad people are starting to see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks for sticking up. But I think that is another group difference. I was taught, don't blame other people. If there's a problem, what's your part in it? And not to say, ouch or no, or you can't do that. So I appreciate that. And I think that's totally true. I think that the white people that went to Capitol Hill, that group is a horrible reality that we have to face right now, and that is the power that keeps us afraid. Never been afraid to walk outside for fear of being told. I was called a gook before the pandemic by a drive-by. That was like, what? This is a shocker. But yes, we have responsibility to enforce our own force, I think.
And Marissa, if you don't mind, like what Manju was saying about the institutions, I mean, it's absolutely true of what she says. But I think that this is our time to really express to our communities that voting and being a part of the process is our voice. And until we show up, until I can walk into City Hall and say, I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf, but when an issue is important to the Asian American community and the AAPI community, that I can say, you know what, in the last election, there were 55,000 of us, that voted. And, that's a one step that I'm hoping that we can get them to understand that, there's real power at that ballot box. And I'm not just talking about, electing new, more Asian American leaders. I'm talking about influencing the people who are in power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I could jump in here, you started, Dr. Marissa, by talking about this fixed pie mentality, that if we are uplifted, then it takes away from other communities. And I think we have to break that mentality. Communities of color need to band together to fight the system of systemic racism. And as Manju said, fight white supremacy. And instead of having this zero-sum game attitude where there's a limited pie and we're going to be taking from others, we need to talk about expanding the pie for all of us. Because when all communities of color win against systemic racism, a victory for one of us is a victory for all of us. Prejudice is happening right now to the Asian community. We saw the Black Lives Matter really elevate what was happening in the Black community. Somebody else is going to come next. Mm-hmm. It is not going to end with us here. And so when we all work together and we know Blacks are showing their allyship to us, then we are supporting one another because we know it's going to come back. Mm-hmm. And what I would say right now is that companies and American society is starting to finally understand how systemic racism is a problem of our American society. We can't end racism against Asians if only Asians care about it. It's only when white people and Black people and Latinx and everyone cares about it are we going to address it. The Black Lives Matter movement taught us the same thing about anti-Blackness. And so what I would give as an example is that we're seeing companies start to say, we're not going to take money away from diversity and inclusion efforts in the Black community and reappropriate it to the Asian community. No, what they're saying is we're going to dig deeper and give even more. And so, for example, Bank of America came to us and they said, we want to, instead of giving $1 billion for racial equity, which is what they committed to during the Black Lives Matter movement, they said, we're upping that to $1.25 billion. And then they said, we'd like you to join our advisory council because there are no Asian Pacific Islanders in that council. I'm not taking the seat away from somebody. I am adding to the voice and the diversity there. And we need to keep thinking about that. We need to keep thinking about how do we push other Asians, other Blacks, other people in the Latinx community and lift all of our voices together, because then we all benefit. Yeah. I think when you look at the model minority myth, which was introduced in the 60s, the idea said Asian Americans are the model minority. So you are doing so well. What's wrong with you, Black people and brown people? Why can't you lift yourselves up by your bootstraps the way the Asian community has? That kind of mentality creates a wedge and is very destructive to pit Asian Americans against other communities of color. That is a structure of racism that keeps us all down. We can't buy into that. We have to all understand we come together.
Absolutely. Totally 1000% agree. And it takes a concerted effort to communicate that messaging as well as stop Asian AAPI hate. It is, we are all in this together, but not in the hashtag All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter, which is the whole reason why I brought this up. We have to get to that point where, and be careful around the us versus them, because this is the other thing, the pushback is now I have people who are Caucasian, white people, friends coming to me and saying, people just automatically, because I'm white, say that I'm a racist. And they come in with that. And so I get defensive. So we've really got to get better at non-polarizing languaging, non-polarizing messaging, which is my whole hashtag positively opinionated, because the hate just continues to hit us on hate.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's very important that we recognize when people are coming out of, if it's just ignorance or just, or they're coming at us with hate. Because sometimes when someone says something that might be offensive to me, I try to take the time, when I don't feel they mean it in a hateful way, but the time to explain it and to make them understand why and how that affects me. What we got to get away from is that immediate anger and shout out when the person meant no offense to it, because I don't think anyone learns anything in that situation. And I hope that we recognize those differences and take the time that when it's not coming at us from hate, but maybe just because of time and age or anything, to take the time to just explain to them, because I think that's how we're going to help move us along and teach people.
I call it the BOD, giving people the benefit of the doubt. So, Steve, I'd like to ask from your perspective about this whole discussion, because you're a little younger, even though I'm ageless, of the panel. So what's your take on all of this?
I mean, I absolutely agree with our three amazing leaders here. It is definitely time, and we have to unite. And as speaking from more of a younger perspective, although all of you are very, very much.
Thank you.
Yes. I think the younger generation has really come out to protest, to participate, and asking our friends and family and supporters to come out and stand in solidarity. And that goes beyond the AAPI community. And I think that's very powerful. And especially when you combine that with the movement in social media, where we've seen the power of social media with the BLM movement, it is happening here with the Stop Asian Hate. And I'm very encouraged and very grateful for all the loving support. And I've been getting so many messages from other communities of color as well, saying, Steve, what can I do for you? What can I do for the Koreatown community? What can I do for the API community? So these are amazing. So, we need more allies. We need more allies in other communities, just like what Connie mentioned and Manju and the councilman mentioned. There are so many ways to get involved. And I know earlier today at the city council, there was a motion that Councilmember Lee co-authored where they were talking with LAPD about different ways and resources. And it gives everybody an opportunity to voice public comment. And I know many of these processes are conducted in English, and it's very challenging for the monolingual Asian American community members. So it is up to us, especially the younger generation, to help our elders and our parents stay engaged with the process, to tell them that we're in this together.
Beautiful. Connie, I think you were going to comment on that. I thought you were nodding, but you don't have to.
No, sorry. I will add when I have been really inspired by younger Asian Americans, the millennials and the Zoomers, because they have an understanding about race and white privilege and systemic racism and a way to articulate in a vocabulary that I never had when I was, starting out as a civil rights attorney. And they are so energized and galvanized. We saw them come out and vote during the elections. We're seeing them speak out now, and we're seeing that heightened sensitivity around this allyship that we're talking about that is very inspiring. And so it is definitely one of the things that we're trying to do at Advancing Justice LA is see how we can better tap in to this younger generation of activists and Asian American youth who seem to be so powerful and outspoken and so understand these issues in a way that's so much more mature than I ever did, certainly in my 20s.
Yes, that whole millennial attitude is working for us now. But if you're wondering who I'm talking to, we're going to take a quick break to thank the sponsors who make this show possible. You are tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced, get happy with Dr. Marissa. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Peace in, peace out.
Dr. Marissa here, ready to drive a car that was designed with you in mind? Using patented technology, Mazda is focused on creating a human-centric vehicle, and Capistrano Mazda is ready to put you in the driver's seat. Family-owned and operated, Capistrano Mazda gives you a mileage guarantee. When you buy your new Mazda, you become part of their family. So visit capomazda.com today like I did, and now I can't stop smiling with my fabulous new Mazda MX-5 convertible Miata.
Welcome back, and you are tuned into Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced, get happy with Dr. Marissa every Friday at 3 p.m. My new primetime drive time slot with KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind. That's AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and streaming everywhere. Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, on and on and on, because this is a show about hope and happiness. And thank you for joining. Today, it's a very important day. I know you all thought I was Swedish, but I'm actually Chinese. And all of these things that have been happening on Hate Asians, Hate AAPI, are impacting me. So I thought we would spend not just one show, but two. And I invited some local community Asian leadership on purpose, because we are in LA. We have a population here that is being impacted. We are all part of ending racism. And so I have invited them here today. And we just finished talking about fixed pie. Now I'm going to talk about the Asian pie, because this is an interesting, I don't know about you, when I grew up, I was told that not Asians are all alike, and there's almost a pecking order, which was kind of shocking to me, putting another moose on the table, about, we are, Chinese is very different than Japanese, very different than Korean, very different than Cambodian, Filipina, So how? Let's see. How can we speak on behalf of the entire Asian community in an inclusive way that also recognizes the differences between us? So Manju, I'm going to go to you first because it looks like you want to address that.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Marissa. Well, one thing I would say first is, in this particular moment, we know that all parts of our community are being impacted by hate. Our organization helped to form Stop AAPI Hate a year ago. And in that time, we've received almost 4,000 incident reports from all 50 states and the District of Columbia. For the month of March, we've received a significant uptick, which we'll be reporting on very shortly. But what I can say is it's affecting all of us. So, while the targets might be Chinese Americans, it's also impacted Korean Americans, Vietnamese, Filipino, Pacific Islanders, as well as South Asians. And so when we realize those commonalities, right, that essentially white supremacy comes after all of us, right, and finds ways to target us for, whether it's discrimination in the workplace and housing, being refused service at the grocery store, and sometimes physical attacks. I think that's where we know that we need to come together because, frankly, the perpetrators, the racists, don't care, right, what our individual ethnicity is. They think that for them, they want all of us to, quote, go back to our country, right? Even though this is our country. And so when we remember that, I think it gives us an opportunity for solidarity to work together on these issues. And honestly, that's what the heart of AppCon is about. It's that we have 40 member organizations that all come together across ethnicity, across religion, across language, and we work on policies that help the community. And so I'm really heartened in this moment that we're going to do that. Again, just like we've done in the past, I know that we can come together and solve this problem together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Connie?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I wanted to say, when I think about what are some of the things that we should be doing as a society, for Asian Americans, I'm encouraging, if you have experienced any sort of incident of hate, to report it. Whether it's a criminal act or not, Stop AAPI Hate has done a tremendous job of using their platform to count the numbers, amplify that, and show the world this is happening. The more people who report it, the better. So whether it's going online to Stop AAPI Hate and doing it, or at Advancing Justice LA, we have multilingual helpline in 6 different API languages where people can call in and report it to us. I encourage everyone to tell the story, because it's only by collecting those stories and really showing how the volume of cases we have that it really is the reality check. Mm-hmm. And then what I'm saying for allies who are not themselves being victimized, what you can do is think about how you can help to make our society safer and make the world safer for Asian Americans. We at Advancing Justice LA are about to launch bystander intervention trainings. So that way you know how you can, if you witness an Asian being harassed, how you can safely intervene to de-escalate the situation. So there are tactics that you can do. For example, if you're on a train and you see somebody harassing an Asian person, you can do something indirectly just to change the focus and attention. You can drop a cup of coffee and then everyone's going to look at you, and that breaks that moment. Or you can go and say to the bus driver, hey, stop the bus and make this person get out. There are these very specific tangible tactics, but we need to create that kind of safer community, because we saw in New York City where that Asian woman was attacked in broad daylight on the sidewalk. It was caught by cameras. And what did those bystanders do? The guards, they just closed the door. That is not the type of society we want to live in. We want to live in a society where we all have each other's backs, and we say this will not be tolerated. So anyone who's interested in that, I would encourage you to go to advancingjustice-la.org to learn about the trainings.
I'm going to put that in the banner because I think that's brilliant. To be able to have a practical, which is my last question. What practical things can we do to be part of the solution to move from hate to a place of respect and ending racism. So that's my final question that'll take us out. So who would like to hit that one? Connie already did.
Manju, you want to go first? Okay.
Oh, sure. So, I mean, what I would say following on Connie's brilliant comments is that we definitely report it. That's first and foremost, because it's only through reporting, Dr. Marissa, that we'll understand this problem, right? And we'll be able to address it in the ways that are most appropriate. And we share, I know Connie and her organization shares the information. We share it with policymakers, with the public, with reporters. Number two is to donate your time and energy in this moment. If you can attend a rally like the wonderful rally that Steve and KYCC held a few weeks back, if you can, contribute time and volunteer with organizations in your communities. That's so important right now. And the last thing is, I really appreciate Councilmember Lee's leadership in the LA City Council. We need every city council in America to pass a resolution against hate at our community members. And there's a lot more that can be done. That's the first step. And I think we need stronger civil rights laws. We need stronger voting rights laws across the country to make sure that each and every one of us can participate in our democracy, and that we know that this is a country where we belong, right? One of the saddest things I heard from the mother of the child I mentioned who was attacked in February of 2020 is she said, Manju, before the press conference, we were thinking of going back. We were thinking of going back because this was not our country anymore. And afterwards, she said, to see all of our leaders stand up for our family meant all the difference for them. So I think that's what we need to see. And again, just so happy to be on with this amazing panel.
Yes, absolutely. John.
Well, I think I'm just going to reiterate the points of that it's important that we use this time to speak up. If something happens to you, understand we're right now publishing brochures in all the different Asian languages to pass out in different communities to how to recognize and what types of things that they need to report. So I'm hoping that guide is helpful to them so they know when to call in, because that's going to be very important, to us. And also to what Connie was saying, if you see any form of hate, whether it be towards Asian American community or any other race, religion, color, don't be a bystander. It sickened me to see that video.
Yeah,
the people closing the door, and that's not the world that I live in, and I don't want to be a part of where we turn our backs like that. So when you see it, happening, regardless of race, don't be just a bystander.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Steve.
Yeah, and I also would add that please use within your network. Please make your voices heard. Use the social media to amplify many of the different initiatives and events that are happening in your own community. And to all the listeners that are listening in today, please call your elected offices, whether it's the council member like John Lee's office or the city council, the county, the state, and the federal. I think now it's our time to really pass meaningful legislation, not just here in the city of Los Angeles, but at the state level, on the federal level, to make sure that enough resources and other types of protective measures are enshrined within the law. And I think it is our time to do that today, and we can't do it alone. And all of you, if you join us, that will make this process much smoother.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I actually became American. I was in the first group after 9/11, so it was a choice. I had been in the country a while as a legal immigrant, and it was a choice. And I'll tell you, until all of this started happening, I was an extremely proud American. And I'm still a proud American, but I have to say, watching that video, that was a moment where I was like, wow, this is what is wrong with us? Me, Miss Positive, was not very positive. So it's going to take every one of us taking our power, which is voting, which is speaking and saying, this is not okay. I know overcoming as a Chinese woman, the upbringing where I'm told that if you're a Chinese carpenter and you ask the Chinese carpenter, do you do good work? The Chinese carpenter will say, oh, no, just average. And that's a group difference that I grew up with, that I have to say, yes, that's true in my culture. And now as an Asian American woman, I also have a responsibility as an American to voice my right to be treated with respect, and that it's not okay. And I'm not average, and I'm, just as important as any other group, and my voice matters as a support to other groups that are also going through what it is as discrimination, race, and prejudice. And I do credit the past president with one thing alone, and that is ripping off the Band-Aid that was covering an infection. I was grateful to be part of the value and diversity efforts in the mid-90s, First Interstate Bank, Los Angeles County. But what we did accidentally was drive some of that prejudice underground and under the smooth waters above, sharks below. So that infection, as we saw on Capitol Hill, is extremely infected. So the one thing that he did was rip off the Band-Aid. So now it can heal. This is our time, as you all have said. I absolutely agree. This is our time to heal and disinfect all of the pus that is truly spilling out in every single hate crime that we see. So thank you so much. We're about at the end. I want to give us enough time to answer the question that Layla Ali answered on the show, and Don Wells, beautiful Don Wells from Gilligan's Island, which is, to who and what are you most grateful for? So we do end up on a positive note. Sorry. That's what I like to do. So let's go, Manju. Let's start with you.
Well, first off, I'm so grateful right now to be in community with all of you, and just so many of the wonderful leaders that have, been part of that Asian American Pacific Islander movement for so long. I don't think, after Atlanta and after really this year of hate against our communities. And I want to say, as part of that too, is civil rights leaders outside of the AAPI community, including African American, Latinx, Jewish American, white, all of those folks coming to our aid and support, I think has been so meaningful and has really helped me to have the strength that I need really to get through this.
Beautiful. Thank you, Manju. Connie.
Right now, one thing that I'm grateful for is the recognition and the acknowledgement and the highlighting of Asian Americans. That is the silver lining to what has been this terrible tragedy. But for once, people are talking in America about Asian Americans, and we are in the forefront of recognition about what's happening to us. And so for how terrible this has been, it has also been, it's been wonderful to have everyone outside in America saying things like, I stand in support of you. I stand in solidarity with you. I care about the Asian American community, because I've never heard that in the way that we're hearing that now. So I'm grateful for that.
Beautiful. Steve.
So I'm definitely grateful for all the love and support that we're getting. But at the same time, I have to take this opportunity to give a big shout out to my parents. I have a beautiful 1-year-old, and I can't be doing all the work that I'm doing today with our amazing leaders here if it wasn't for my parents, who are, babysitting when I need to go plan that rally in Koreatown and be out there with the council member and with Connie and Manju. So, I really want to say, I immigrated to this country after the third grade, and they've sacrificed so much. And I think the council member would agree with his story as well. But if it wasn't for our parents, we're not who we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the same answer as Steve. Having a mother who was a strong woman, who fought against, sometimes in the Asian community of a male-dominated system, a business owner, chairwoman of boards, and while being a mother of two kids, really my true inspiration in life, and my father for being, coming here in 1958, feeling that glass ceiling and being actively involved as an Asian American in the 70s, and bringing me to rallies as a child and teaching me that if I wanted to effectuate real change, that I need to do it from the inside, and for him, pushing me to become the person I am today.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how do people support you in your office? If we could go around the panel as well, I'm sure volunteers in your organizations. What can people do? How do they get a hold of you? How do they support you? Go ahead.
Well, if you're talking about like the support that I've gotten, I mean, really, obviously, my staff has no choice but to support me because I'm the boss. But
and you have great staff, by the way.
Thank you. No, I do. I'm very blessed with the staff. But honestly, I'm really proud of maybe proud's not the right word. I'm very touched by my community, from people of all different walks of life, coming to me in community meetings, whether they be on Zoom or live now, expressing their support and really expressing their disgust at what has been happening to our community.
Mm-hmm. When you're voted in, right? In what district?
In District 12. So I'm in the Northwest Valley.
Okay. So if you're in the Northwest Valley and you didn't vote, now you know who to vote for, right? John Lee. Great.
Thank you for the plug, Marissa.
You're welcome. See, I had to do it. We have to do it for each other, right? Manju.
Well, I would just want to thank all our volunteers, our board members, and really the staff of all the APCON organizations, because it's really through all of their work on the front lines, helping people in language, in culturally competent ways, that I think we're able to even make it through this pandemic. It has been such a hard time, even aside from the hate that they're feeling, dealing with COVID, trying to stay safe and healthy. And so I think without their support, we wouldn't be able to do the work we do.
Right. I think I wasn't clear on my directive here. I was actually asking if people could support, how people can support you and your organization. So I have down Connie's, because that's the training, which I think is very valuable training on what to do when you see hate friends. Can people volunteer or get involved in your organization?
Yes, absolutely. So APCON, and I'll add our information as well, our website, and Stop API Hate, and there are opportunities there on how people can get involved and help out.
Yeah, beautiful. Steve?
Yes, so we definitely need additional volunteers. If you go to also on our website, kyccla.org, there are ways to volunteer. And we're all, very much focused on this issue, but at the same time, all of our organizations are providing other indirect services and advocacy campaigns as well. So we definitely have a lot of different areas where people can volunteer their time. And also, if you have other means, please support many of the advocacy organizations that are taking the lead on this issue.
Beautiful. And
Dr. Marissa,
yes.
Sorry, could I just add, in addition to the bystander intervention training at Asian Americans Advancing Justice LA, we do have a social media campaign, and we have some assets there that we would love if people can follow us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and help circulate some of those social media campaigns to keep the message going. And you can always follow our email listserv to find out when we're doing additional bystander intervention trainings and other ways to support.
Beautiful. Okay, I think I've got them all down there now. We'll have that ticker tape going to finish off the hour. But I'm so grateful that I got to have all of you. We actually got quite a bit done today. So thank you for being part of this. And we're going to get your final applause. Here we go. Thank you so much, and take care. I'm going to just sign off now. Please do go to drmarissa.life if you'd like any of the contact information from here. The Asian Oprah giveaway today is a copy of my children's book, Mommy, What Are Feelings? So make sure you go to drmarissa.life in that caption, because we want our kids to talk about their feelings as well. You know, get involved, do the voting and all of that. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Keep it tuned to take my advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced and get happy with Dr. Marissa. Peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace.
Well, she has been dubbed the Asian Oprah, and she just wants all of us to be happy.
Dr. Marissa, aka the Asian Oprah, says the most important thing you can choose is choosing to be happy.
You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa.
That's the idea for Dr. Marissa Pay's new book called 8 Ways to Be Happy.
Many of us say, I am my own worst critic. Nobody's harder on me than I am. And my response to that is, stop it! Why are you doing that to yourself? You have to be your biggest fan, because if you can't at the end of the day say, I did a good job, who is? We don't have to constantly be angry at the things that are wrong. Why don't we choose to be happy about things that are right? We have the choice. That's our muscle. And life is so amazing if we can see it.